Good.
Oh, okay.
We're
Good.
live.
Welcome to the sunny side of freedom. Thank you for joining us today. Sorry for the delay today. We had a little tech difficulty, or I should say, I had a little tech difficulty. Today's podcast is brought to you by Break Stigmas. If you're not familiar with Break Stigmas, please follow us. Go check us out. Breakstigmas.com is our nonprofit, and I'd like to introduce you to our panel today. Chief, kick us off.
Absolutely. I'm 420 Chief. I am co founder of Break Stigmas, and my mission is primarily to educate and raise awareness to plant medicine healing, different methods of consumption, etc. Um, and I do that by interviewing veterans and letting them tell their stories of healing through traumas, etc. So, without saying too much, that's me. That's my mission. And on TikTok, I do music therapy just to kind of demonstrate different ways to overcome, ways to unite, and really show people that they're not really alone. We're all kind of going through something, but we're going through it together. So, yeah, co founder, Break Stigmas, and then independent mission 420 Chief.
Awesome. We're on you, 4 points. Or you want
That's it. Yeah. So I'm 4 Points Ranch, Brian. Uh, I was asked to come along to help out Break Stigmas, and it was an honor to do so. So I do the quality control because of my OCD. So I look at everything that goes on with Break Stigmas and ensures that the quality is there that we push out to every individual that meets Sonny's and Chief's standards. And then I also look and control the finances for Break Stigmas. And I'm a retired Army vet. I started building 4 Points Ranch and to also bring in veterans and to build a community and share our stories that way. And that's me.
I guess that means I'm next. So I'm Scooter, and I do the grant writing, sponsorships, and ambassadorships for Break Stigmas and support that as an overall mission. I also do the same for 420 Chief and Sunny Side of Freedom, and that's primarily what my role there is. I was Navy, both regular Navy and Riverine. Um, that's where Chief and I met, and having gone through a lot of the transition myself, I now want to try to get that awareness out so that those who feel like they can't talk about it have someone they can see that it is okay to have these conversations.
Oh,
Sam,
okay. Sorry. I was waiting on you. My
no, we're
name's
on you, girl.
Samantha. My name's Samantha Bassett. I am the surviving spouse of Mitchell Bassett. He is a part of the 22. Unfortunately, that became the case late last year. So, what I stand for here is bringing education to a lot of the things that he dealt with, such as PTSD and moral injury, which we're going to cover today. And my mission on TikTok, if you go back and watch videos, I'm essentially trying to bring awareness to the situation and figure out who to get in contact with to where we can make this a prevention thing instead of an awareness thing.
And welcome back. Thank you all for being here today. If you're not familiar with the Sunny Side of Freedom, founder of Break Stigmas, and I also have a TikTok platform and a YouTube channel, as you can see, bringing awareness every single day to mental health, raising awareness and breaking the silence on many stigmas, not just one. This is something that I have joined forces with, of course, with friends on TikTok and other platforms. 420 Chief and I coming together to create this nonprofit because we need to make some noise. And that's what we intend to do. Raising awareness isn't just, wearing the t-shirts. It's much, much greater than that. So we have taken to our social media platforms in doing so. And of course, we're also taking it into our communities every opportunity that we have. We all have individual missions, and I'm super honored to be here with all of you. Thank you all for your service. And Samantha, welcome back to my platform. I know that you and I recently had our podcast. I interviewed you where you should have shared a little bit of your story. So, for those joining us today, our topic, this is episode 1. Our topic today is PTSD, a term that I think most are familiar with, but we're also going to be discussing moral injury. And how I would like to kick it off today is on the topic first of PTSD. And I'm going to go through the panel and ask you all, how has PTSD affected your lives? And if you can share a personal story. Chief?
Wow, that one's actually it's a pretty broad area, but I guess I could just say, looking back, probably the biggest form of PTSD for me was um, the way that I coped with everything that was going on with me, and like the use of alcohol, the abuse of prescription medication to avoid certain thoughts, certain judgment calls, and to just numb myself so that I could cope with just getting up and getting through the day sometimes, and not even realizing that's what it was for me. So that impacted my life in many ways. One, becoming homeless, a divorce. I wasn't able to see my children. I had a custody battle for 8 months at one point in time. So for me, it impacted everything about my life, so to speak.
And how would you say it's impacting your life today?
Today, it's a daily practice, a work in progress, because PTSD isn't just one thing. It it's a lot of things, and for me specifically, that one of those things can be my anxiety can be triggered very easily. And, like, just like if one of my children leaves a piece of trash or doesn't clean up after themselves, or it's muddy now, and my dogs come through the house and make a big mess, and it triggers me in one way. Or if they back talk or they're late, even just even today in this podcast, technical difficulty, delays, things are not on time, they're out of control. It triggers me. It gets gets my anxiety going, and that impacts the way I respond, react, or even am present in certain situations like parenting.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate you sharing that. 4 points.
How's it going?
Well,
Yeah, right.
well,
Mine, it's kind of different. Everybody comes with anxiety. Mine came with massive amounts of anger, uh, and learning to, I guess, try to control it, because as it builds, the stressors and the variety of things. Mine is definitely anger, and if it's unchecked, as it has in the past, and has caused, can't say loss of jobs, but has caused difficulties in my life, for I guess, the anger being so bad to where it's blinding, and you take somebody's, good thought, or you take somebody's, word, and it comes to you as negativity, and it's not meant that way the person said it, but I'm so I'm so fucking angry that it comes that way. It just And I perceive it that way. And uh, it's been really it has been challenging since I got out in 2019. It has been extremely challenging on how I can cope with it. And I it's compiled here recently, and I usually walk the path alone to kind of try to calm myself down before I wind up doing something that myself and everybody else around me is going to regret. So how I coped with it was I found God, you know, uh, and that's just me. But I reached out to him and I started reading books, not necessarily the Bible, but verses, and uh, it started to calm me down. And it started to allow me to enjoy, I guess life. Yeah. Uh, and then I put it away. I thought I was okay. I did. I put it away for probably a year now. I read this book for 2 years straight, and I decided to put it away. And I was like, yeah, I'm better. I still praise the Lord, all that. But here recently, it has come up to a volcano where I was in a bad spot the other day. That I was going to hurt somebody, and I was like, all right, this is not good for me, not good for my son, not good for this person. So I needed to refocus myself, step away. I picked up my book again, and I think I just need to continue that because it helps me tremendously. So that's me so far. Yeah.
Thank you. And how are you doing today?
Better. Better. I
Good.
read my verse this morning, and it was, holy cow, it was spot on.
What was
Awesome.
it?
It's on Amazon.
Yeah, it was the big problems and the small problems in your life let go, and to walk with deer feet. And I was like, walk with deer feet. And the big problems and the small problems, yeah, they're there. But if you walk, and basically deer feet walk lightly, if you walk lightly through the day, it'll be okay. It will. So
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Good to hear.
Deer feet I went.
Keep deer feeding and until
That's
you can
it.
stomp it out.
That's it.
Thank you, 4 points.
Yes, ma'am.
Scoop.
Well, I could say I relate to both that have already gone through, and we've talked about this before. That I would say the majority of us have very similar. Alcohol was a way of dealing, which then just led to more problems and more problems. Um, the anger and I guess impulse control was a huge one for me. Um, I was more prone to I'd get in a fight in public. It didn't bother me. I wouldn't stop. I've gotten that better under control. I had a little slip back here about a month or so ago that I talked to you about. I recognize that, and I also kind of searched. Well, why did I have that slip? Why did I become so angry at someone in a drive-through? Um, and part of it is as Brian had said, for him, his book, and for me, it's the meditation. If I don't stay consistent with meditation and kind of my routine, it will that PTSD will start to kick back in. I wanted to take an opportunity, since we're on PTSD, though, to discuss real quickly that I'm having to reassess some of that. Samantha had put up one of her videos that talked about what the symptoms of TBI are. And I was told when I'd gotten home in 2011, we did a cognitive test at the hospital that I had mild TBI. I'd had two concussions in less than 30 days. That's all they told me. Here we are now in 2025. And some of those things that I do and the impulsiveness that comes in and the feelings that I get relate, it seems, more to the TBI than even the PTSD. But I think they all kind of are in that same realm. But it is a daily effort um, to make sure that you're doing the things you have to keep yourself in a space that you don't allow the trauma to take over. Um, but yeah, that's kind of where mine's at, I guess. My bigger thing now is focusing on that TBI part and seeing if maybe that's not a portion of it.
Thank you, Scoop. Sam.
Well, I'm actually going to go from two different angles here because technically I'm giving you point of view from two different people. So we'll start with Mitchell with the way that he did correlate a lot with a lot of what everything y'all are saying. He also dealt with some of like the flashbacks. I remember specifically a time where we had some fireworks going off and he was fine through the front of it, but right there towards the end, for whatever reason, like he's something in him snapped and he couldn't remember where he was, what he was doing. He was just scared. Like he thought he was right back there. And that is a great example of how PTSD is about like the flashbacks and stuff like that of that sort and how it's distinguished in that aspect. Um, and then for me, I guess my PTSD has a lot to do with finding him, and for me that it affects me in all types of ways, in ways that I'm not even sure I'm going to find all at one time. It's certain things like hearing an ambulance go by, like something about that, it puts me back in that moment. I get a lot of night terrors, a lot of nightmares, a lot of night sweats, but it really comes in waves when it hits you in that sense. Uh, and those are things that I can't really control. I mean, it makes me shaky. It's where I can't really talk, so that's kind of how it affects me. And I guess as far as dealing with it goes, man, I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm getting there though.
Laura, I'm super proud of you and your courage. I know you've said before that you don't always feel strong, but we see your strength. And this event in your life, you will look back on it and you're going to be like, how the hell did I survive that? You will reach the top of that mountain. You're going to look back and say, how did I do that? It's amazing what we can endure as human beings. And sometimes I think everyone on this panel can at least say we've been in a place where, like, I can't take much more, whether it's that mental, emotional, spiritual, physical exhaustion of feeling like I can't take much more, I'm going to break. Um, as for myself, I've had several different events in my own life. And what I want to say to our audience today is look at this panel today. And part of Break Stigmas, like Sunny had initially presented, is bringing the different stigmas. And one of them is having a consistent effort of trying to message out there that, yes, civilians can speak to our veterans. And that is what our panel is today. We are bridging the gap. I am a civilian. Samantha's a civilian. She was married to a veteran. We have veterans on our platform today. But one of the things that we all have in common is that, as many of you obviously, are emotions. Emotions connect people. Emotions allow us to have conversation where we can resonate from a place of either pain, hurt, trust, whatever it may be. And when we look at interactions with others in that way, it opens up the door to communication, which is so vital. So I know we're finishing kind of talking about a little bit of the PTSD, but one of the things I think I already have the answer to for our veterans today, or even you, Sam, um, because I can answer it for myself and my own personal experiences. And Sam, some of what you just shared resonated. I too had a moment in my life, an event that was very tragic, and I had night terrors, and I couldn't see helicopters, like Lifestar helicopters, for a really long time. So that is your trauma. Your body's gone through trauma, and for some people, they're lucky enough that putting in that extra work, the mindfulness as they call it, requires a lot of work to recover from. Some do, and some don't. And then we're going to have moments like 4 points just shared, or even Chief, where something will trigger us, and we're right back to that feeling again. And that's the trauma. Our bodies don't forget. We find ways to overcome where we're functioning better emotionally, mentally, in every way as we go through the grief of it. Because every event that leads that brings us any type of trauma is going to definitely leave a scar. So it's to be expected that there's going to be moments in our lives where something is triggered. But how do we get to a place where we're controlling it or identifying it? And that's the missing piece for so many. They haven't discovered that yet. Um, but I wanted to quickly ask all of you, before these events took place in your life for our veterans, prior to going into service, did you have PTSD?
I did, for sure.
I had trauma, uh, yeah, no father, no mother, that sort of thing. But I don't know if you call that PTSD or not, but yeah, I had trauma growing up for sure.
Okay. Sue?
Yeah, and that was kind of that's kind of the way I look at that too, Brian, is um I didn't have a lot with my dad. I'm just now getting that relationship. My stepdad was an alcoholic and very abusive. So the trauma certainly was there, but I don't know. I guess I also don't really know that I would, is it PTSD? I don't know. Good question.
Sam?
It may it may be because I've dealt with it a little bit beforehand, and I don't know why, but I have noticed that in females, childhood PTSD seems to be more of an issue,
Hmm.
and it's not a subject where I'm going to talk about much. But yeah, I've dealt with PTSD in the past.
Okay. The reason I asked this question is because part of breaking stigmas is breaking the thought that only veterans have PTSD, right? And I'm trying to break that box. Anybody can have PTSD at any given time through life's traumas, life's events. A lot of it does come from childhood trauma. And that's for any one of us. And I would have to agree that, yes, even my own anxiety. I remember when I was going to school, I was like, oh shit, I have anxiety. Duh. you know and I had to put in the work and discover. That's part of the self discovery, is like, well, when did it really start for me? And then when we add in our veterans who have spent years of service, given and gone through those additional experiences, and what are we doing to help ourselves overcome to a place where we're functioning okay, or feel like we're functioning okay, where we could get back a sense of feeling stable and happy. Because we all know when we get into our headspace, that's a tough one. There's It's very hard to get out of that space. And I've had these conversations with several veterans, but I've had these conversations with others also. It requires a lot of work, but it also requires leaning into support. And support is so hard to lean into when you feel like no one can understand you. Um, and I don't know if anyone on the panel would like to add to that before we move on to moral injury.
Well, just briefly, I wanted to touch on it. And I think this is part of why I almost feel like they're two separate things. Um, is that childhood trauma, actually any of them, you're gonna deal with that as far as um like what you do in counseling or what type of treatment you seek is going to be, I think, really dependent upon what are the circumstances, because one size isn't going to fit the other. And I know that the trauma prior to service compared to after service, the way I would deal with that is two totally separate ways. I wouldn't feel comfortable discussing most of the things that I experienced in the service. I wouldn't talk about those in a group therapy that wasn't veterans. Our meetups are a place that circle around the fire. We're all veterans. We have an understanding, and so that makes dealing with the discussion a different thing.
And if I may add to Scooter there, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And while I think that, like you, PTSD is not a one size fits all. Not it's not all going to be the same, but it is very dependent on trauma. And when it comes to dealing with that war trauma that we're specifically talking about, PTSD in war and PTSD when it comes to the military side of it, it's very important that we have support groups that are veterans, that have gone through that, because it is a different kind of trauma, like versus having something done to you Almost as most childhood traumas is something's being done to you. And when it comes to the war side of it, it's more about what you had to do and endure over there, you know.
Thank you, Sam. Um, thank you all for participating in that. And for those watching today, if you have any questions on PTSD, please feel free to engage us in the comments section. Shoot us any topics that you think would or you'd like us to add on to. We'd love to hear from you. And I just wanted to quickly go back to what Scooter just said and Sam in reference to veterans needing veterans. They most certainly do. And what I have found since I started the Sunny Side of Freedom was that I found a lot of veterans that were isolated until they found each other. And that's where I saw growth happen. That's where I saw them, I'm just going to say it, come to life again, start to feel again, start to use the L word, love, love for each other again, express love for others, including themselves. And that didn't happen overnight. I can tell you many, many stories just from the 2 years that I've been hosting a veterans live, where so many came in resistive of, I'm not sharing first. That was it. I'm not sharing, I'll watch. Took a few months for them to start to share in the comments because they felt they had created somewhat of a, there's a safe space here, there's brothers and there's sisters, and these civilians are kind of okay. And then it got to, I'm getting in a box. I think I can talk, and then turning on the camera. It's like a step, it's a process. And that is what we're trying to demonstrate when we're doing what we're doing and bringing our awareness that yes, people need people, civilians need veterans, veterans need civilians, because it is one of the leading causes, this type of isolation of feeling alone with oneself, that is destructive to the family units, divorce increase, all of it, depletion, so many terrible things that are happening that I think that if we talked about this more, which is part of the break stigmas and breaking that silence, is having these conversations on social media platforms, letting others know that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to say, I have these things going on, and oh my God, I just discovered I'm not alone, which is another very important message. You're truly never alone. You only discover that you're not alone when you start reaching out. And in this case, I will say that when our veterans hear other veterans speaking, which is why I appreciate your voices so much, coming forward as you do, sharing, you're giving like an open door to someone else to say, come on, it's okay. Look, we're doing it. Um, so thank you so much for that. Before we move on, any other questions or anything any of you would like to add on the topic of PTSD for today? Are we good?
I would
All
just
right.
say, like, I
Yeah,
think everyone here does a great job at demonstrating turning pain into purpose. And I think that's why we're all here. And I think that when we can demonstrate that, enough of us in our own unique ways, that in itself is showing people, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to talk through what's going on because people really do care. And I think that the more that we demonstrate it and do it, the more people will join us in doing it as well. That's all.
absolutely. Absolutely. And, for those watching and even everyone here, we know that anytime something's wrong with us, we need to address it. We need to take care of it before it escalates. So that means that, yes, only you can put that step forward and say, I need to do something. I need to change something. I need to seek additional support, whatever that support looks like. Whether it be, yoga, meditation, music, therapy. There are so many avenues. Are they going to work for everyone? No. Just like Samantha was also saying, everyone's story is different, but there are outlets to help and make it less painful. And, yes, turning pain into purpose. We are in the driver's seat of our lives. And sometimes what happens for so many is that, um, am I looping, Samantha?
No, I was trying to make sure the wind wasn't like coming through my
Oh,
headset on y'all.
okay. I figured I was looping, guys. I don't know. I've had tech issues
No,
today.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Well, thank you all for that. The next part of our podcast today, we wanted to talk about moral injury. And I'm just going to quickly ask the panel. And for those that are with us and watching today or going to go back and rewatch this, have you ever heard of moral injury up until today or a few days ago when we presented the topic for our podcast? Chief?
I had to look it up. Yep.
You too, Scoop?
Yeah, I didn't know what it was, but when I found out the definition of it, I went, "Oh, okay, that's why that feels different." But yeah, I didn't know, but I honestly didn't know until Samantha started putting up the discussion about it.
And I'm going to give the platform over to Samantha, but what I will say is I had no idea either until Samantha had presented it in one of her videos. And I watched a few videos on moral injury, and what I discovered was that it actually goes back all the way back to Trojan War times, and that there really is no said treatment for moral injury, right? And it's really interesting. But to date, what I'm finding is that even psychologists and therapists are struggling on how to best treat and help treat moral injury. So before I say too much, I do want to give this a little bit over to Samantha because this has been this is part of your journey right now, and how you're introducing it on social media and to others.
Thanks, son. So, when I come out on moral injury, this was something that like I did investigate before Mitchell's passing, but it was also something that he brought to me after his first committal. When we had him committed after his first attempt, he brought me a piece of paper that said all about moral injury, and he asked me if I knew about it, and I did. You know, I'd heard about it, I'd read about it a little bit, but I didn't really understand the difference even at that time. You know, and since everything has happened, I've really put a lot of research into everything that I do. Every postcard on videos that I do, I try really hard to make sure that I'm not giving anybody any kind of misinformation. But it was like the flyer that I had made for Mitchell's poster for the benefit ride that we're doing. I had sent it over to my sister-in-law to check it, and she was like, the only thing I'm going to ask is, what is moral injury? And the definition that I gave her, I was like, moral injury is a psychological response and a confliction of the soul. So, with that being a psychological response, it is different than PTSD, which is a disorder. Whereas PTSD is going to cause flashbacks and you have triggers and stuff. Moral injury is something that follows you all the time. It's not a trigger, it's not anything that gets triggered by things. It's when you experience something that you on your own that you either feel like you should have done something more about, or you couldn't do something about, or you had to do something that you now regret or you didn't actually agree with. You know, and I'm not even talking about like in big picture agree with, I'm talking about like in that moment agree with. Like, I know as veterans, and being, if you are a combat veteran, you have been through some things that you don't necessarily wish you would have done, you know, and that's why a lot of those people don't talk about that, because it makes them feel like a bad person. And that's the perfect way to example that out. When Mitchell would tell me, I feel like a bad person because I did this and I'm scared that I'm a bad person. Let me tell you, bad people don't worry about being bad people. Okay, they don't. They don't care. So if you feel that way, that is just a sign of of a moral injury to you. That means that you have either witnessed something, you have either been a part of something, or you were the perpetrator of an event that you didn't necessarily consciously agree with. And so, with that in mind, we have to realize that PTSD and moral injury are two very separate entities. Everybody wants to put moral injury into PTSD and say that moral injury is a type of PTSD, but it's not. It is something all on its own, and it affects your spirituality, it affects your self-worth, it's about guilt, it's about shame, and it's about self-image. And at the end of the day, that is ultimately one of the biggest things that caused Mitchell to feel like he shouldn't have been here anymore, because he didn't feel worthy. He didn't feel like it was okay to be the person that he was, and that he could never accomplish that salvation for redemption that he was looking for so badly in everything that he did. But he didn't need it. And he didn't understand that. And I'm just trying to make sure that veterans that are also experiencing that understand what they're going through. Because the first part of being able to fix that problem and work on that problem is understanding it and knowing it.
Thank you, Sam. I'm going to open up the panel. Chief, would you like to add to that? Have you, I'm just going to let you have it.
I think a lot of us have experienced that in different ways. When I just think about missions like Scooter and I supported when I didn't know what we were really doing at the time. Like so many others, we just followed orders, right? And it wasn't until much later on that I learned the truth about who are we called the bad guys and why they were there, and the reality of what was going on were two different things. And so I see this in a lot of different ways, a lot of different exposures. And what I've always gone back to, or what's always gone through my head in a lot of circumstances, was they're just like me, but it's us versus them, or me versus you in that situation, or whatever. And that's why we train. And I think that's what we tell ourselves so often is, irregardless of the situation, we're put there and we do what we're told, not because of who's telling us to do it, but because of the person to the right and the left, like 4 Points is mentioned before. So um, it's a really difficult one, especially when you do know what you're doing is morally wrong.
And would you say also there's some fight or flight there? You know?
Sometimes you don't have that option. You have no choice but
Hmm.
to fight, and
Yep.
Scooter will train you like we were trained. It's in the fight or flight, you have to fight. Like that's your
Hmm.
option, and it's
Right.
so trained into you that it's a natural response when it happens.
Thank you, Chief. 4 points?
Whew, that's a good one. So you fight with it every day, right? Currently now, and I'll go into a story here in a sec, but you do. Because you fight with it morally in your soul because you know what the right answer is, but you're not willing to accept the consequences. And that's the difference. And that's even today. You're not willing to address the situation, even in your own daily life, right? Work, because if you address it morally, how will it affect you? Will you lose your job? Will you lose your kid? Will you lose your husband? If you address adultery, or if you address, that you think about all that mess in your head, and it messes with your soul, and then in turn, that's why I agree it is separate, because it messes with your brain big time.
Hmm.
So I was in Afghanistan. We were coming back from a patrol, and you get into that point. Well, what to kind of bounce a little bit off of Chief. At the end of the day, it's I look at it as it was either him or me. I chose me. I made a commitment to my family that I was coming home, and he tried to prevent that, and he lost. So I'm here, and he's not. So that's I take that, and I walked into every situation that way. So I did have to fight with that morally. But what I had to fight with was on the way back from this particular patrol. My PL rolled his MRAP, hit a culvert, went off the side, flipped it upside down. I was the platoon sergeant at the time, and got a call from our first sergeant, to stand fast. He was really upset that we didn't have this particular tow equipment with us. And the platoon sergeant before me and my PL made that decision to remove those from all the vehicles. So it wasn't my call at the time. But he was super, super pissed. Anyways, time goes on. The longer you sit there, the more chance we have of getting shot at. So here comes an engineer group that's rolling by, and they have the equipment to flip the vehicle back over, pull it out of the culvert, and and get us towed back. And whatever my first sergeant at the time, he refused. He was like, "Nope, you will wait on QRF." and you will stand fast. And I basically made the decision. I don't know. I guess my PL, obviously, from rolling and being upside down, he wasn't in the right mind to make any types of decisions. So I was making the decisions at the time for everybody. So I made the decision to flip it back over and have it towed back, because my moral was the longer we sit there, the more my men are going to be in harm's way. And the longer I wait on QRF, the more they have a chance to set up a position to start fighting us that we're not ready to fight in, because we have a vehicle upside down. I have 4 people that are currently hurt. And so I made the call. It was the right call, I thought. But this is where I get into morals, right? I morally made the right call to get, that's my job as a platoon sergeant, is to make sure that everybody is safe and returns to that base alive. So that's what I did. The second I got onto base, I got fired. I was fired from my platoon, and I was relieved of command, and I was sent to another platoon. So that's what I tell you when you. I learned that a long time ago. When you make those moral decisions, sometimes you got to be willing to accept the consequences of them, and you know they're right. And if you know they're right, then accept it. And I'll never forget him. I was a private. His name was Sergeant First Class Graff, and I was always the yes man, and he was like, you're in a position. I used to work for Colonel Flynn. I've told you all that, and I was in a position that he was like, you got to stop being a yes man, and I'm like, well, I'm a private. You're a sergeant first class. It's like you say, eat dirt. I eat dirt. And he said, well, you're in a position that you don't do that. So I thought about it for a couple of days. He came in one night and he said, Private Flanagan, how you doing? I said, I'm doing good. He said, man, the purple sky is gorgeous. And I said, Sergeant, the sky is black. It's dark out. He said, do push-ups right now. And so I started doing push-ups, and he said, get up. And he said, you did the right thing because you knew the right answer. But remember, you have to accept the consequences. So I took that forever. Moral is a tough one. It is. It's tough in everybody's life. Whether it's a firefight, whether it's a rolled over vehicle, whether it's your current situation. Some people don't make the right decisions because they're scared of the consequences. That's all I got.
Thank you. Scooter?
So on the moral injury part, and there's other ways that comes. I'm looking into more. Chief and I have talked a few times about some of the missions we did do. Information's coming out, very new information that kind of makes some of what we did maybe a little bit not what we thought it was. But that's not what hits me the most. In January of 2005, I was part of the first crew to show up on a humanitarian after the tsunami in the Indian Ocean, and it hit Sumatra, and and there was a lot of devastation. So I think potentially people feel that maybe moral injury, especially when you talk about veterans, it comes from a combat scenario. I won't say I don't, because again, new information is coming out, but I will say that that humanitarian mission, I always listed it as the most devastating part of PTSD, because that's how it's listed in my VA record, is that's part of my trauma. But then learning what moral injury was, I understand that's what it is, and that's why I can't shake it. So a very quick backstory. My wife and I at the time had been trying to conceive a child, and there were issues. We had medical intervention. I then had the crews come up, and again, the tsunami happened. We were on station. That tsunami pulled lots of civilians into the ocean, into the Indian Ocean. And part of our job when we first got there for the first week, while we were waiting for malaria pills and everything to kick in before flying into Sumatra to provide water and food, was to locate bodies and called back the GPS position. We originally were told we could bring the bodies in and we would store them and reunite them with their families. That changed. The Indian government said, no, we don't want the Americans retrieving. We'll do all the retrieval. Tell us where those bodies are. This is an ocean that has currents. Their vessels were rust buckets, couldn't stay out more than about 6.5, 7 hours anyway. And so while we were doing this in from a rib boat, so just a short little boat with an outboard motor, there were infants that had been separated from their parents in the ocean, and we weren't allowed to bring them on board. We were ordered not to bring them on board. And of course, at that point, even if we had, they would have not accepted it once we got back to the ship. When we got home from that, um, I don't. I wish I knew the exact number. It was so many I lost track. But we went through tubal pregnancy after tubal pregnancy, miscarriage after miscarriage, and finally the doctor said it wasn't healthy to even continue to try anymore. And I know today that in my mind that what I did isn't what caused all of those miscarriages and tubal pregnancies, but in my heart I can't feel like I'm somehow responsible because I was unable to reunite these families. I couldn't bring an infant into a boat. I couldn't take a person who had a baby carrier on their chest and they were right up against the side of the ship. And we just had to take a stick and push them away so we could cycle the engines. Um, and I don't know that I'll ever get past that. But discovering that there's this thing called moral injury and not just PTSD kind of throws that in a mixer. I think that's what I got for today's episode on that.
Thank you for sharing, Scooter. And for our viewers today, if you didn't understand, I hope that put it into perspective a little bit. The weight that is something that you carry with you. It's definitely that's a difficult one, a very difficult one. And thank you for sharing that, Scooter. Thank you, 4 Points and Chief, and of course, Samantha. Um, we chose this topic, these two topics. Yeah, I'm going to go over to you, honey.
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. I just wanted to touch on it before I lose this thought process because I was listening to everything that everybody said.
Yeah.
And the first thing that I wanted to point out was that in those situations, a lot of times, like what y'all are describing, that those are situations where you don't have a choice. And that's something that I tried so hard to explain to Mitchell, that this was a life or death situation. And a lot of the situations that he explained to me, that was the case. So you have to do what you have to do to protect yourself. And the way that Scooter was talking about like his miscarriages and stuff, when Mitchell got blown up back in 2012, he walked onto an IED, like he had shrapnel from the top of his neck all the way down to his ankles. And he basically got a cheap vasectomy from the Marine Corps for that. He got an infection. It caused it to where he couldn't have children. That's why we don't have children. It caused his divorce before me, So, and there were so many times that Mitchell told me because of what he had to do over there, because of the children and the women that he had to eliminate over there because they were a threat, whether he wanted to or not, he felt like that's why he couldn't have children, like he was being punished for it. And so I really resonate with what you're saying when you say that, but I just want to point out the fact that it was life or death, it's fight or flight, and moral injury is not exclusive to military, it is not exclusive to combat vets. This is something that can affect anybody for any reason. It's just that the majority of people that see combat are going to suffer from it.
Thank you, Sam. Well, guys, thank you so much for participating today in our conversation and topic of PTSD and moral injury. I know these conversations aren't always easy to have, but necessary. And we've stepped up to have them because we realize that there are others out there that need help and guidance. And step one is accepting, step two is talking about it. And that's what we're doing. We're kind of opening the door for others to come forward and talk about it. It's okay to talk about it. Um, I think for too long, many have lived in isolation for so many things that have already been discussed today, whether it be the fear of shame, the shame, guilt, you name it. And they don't talk about these things. Um, Very difficult subjects at hand, most certainly. But I just want to say I appreciate every single one of you today. And before we do head out today, I wanted to give you all an opportunity if you had any closing thoughts on either or both topics that we've covered today. Chief,
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
There we go. Yeah, my final message would be you're never alone. No one can break you. You have to allow that. So don't. Healing's a choice, and you get to write the next chapter of your own story and do it your way. When you embrace who you are and you are able to talk about that, the right people will show up and help you. But don't hold it in. You're not alone. We're all going through this shit together. That's it.
Thank you, Chief. 4 points.
Open up when you're ready. Take it slow. Take it fast. Uh, uh, some of y'all may know or may not. I don't like to talk about my military experience. I, I'll open it up piece by piece, and to the ones that are listening, if you're like me, find a group like this and start opening up piece by piece, and it will slowly heal. It will. You don't have to. You don't have to have someone expect you to always, tell every bit of your story to have the understanding. But once you start gravitating towards the people like you see here, and you start opening up, you'll start healing. Thank you.
Thank you. Scoop.
I would just, I'll say this, and this is part of my personality. So the jokester comes around when I get uncomfortable, um, more so than usual. And following these two guys is next to impossible. So on the next one, I'd like to move in a different position. So, but that being said, um, both of these brothers are dead on, and I'll just say it's exactly that. That humanitarian mission, I've referenced it, but what you guys just heard is the most I've ever talked with anybody outside of my wife who had to go through it as well. And I'm sure that played a huge part in kind of where we're at now, which is a whole nother story. But anyway, um, it does take time and you have to do it piece by piece. And I don't know that I would have spoken about that if Sam, you hadn't addressed it, that Mitchell went through that. And my thoughts are a little bit rambled now. Having said it, I was pretty shooken up just saying this out loud, not knowing who all's going to see it. But we talked earlier before this started. If we don't talk, if we don't start bringing it up, if we still just keep the same things hidden and not willing to talk about it, we're not going to have the impact we need to, and that's going to hurt others. And that's the last thing I want is for anyone else to have to hurt. Um, we've got a new generation that's transitioning out, and I think it's up to us to kind of pave the way for them to not have to cycle through all of the same things that we've done. Yeah, we're in the shit together, but let's try to make it a better place for those who are coming next so they know it's okay to talk about it. And that's kind of what I got for today. Thanks again.
Thank you, Scoop. Samantha, closing thoughts for today?
I am the poster child for what you know and what you feel are two different things. And you can know anything about your situation and explain why you did what you did and make it make sense to you. And that does not mean that because you can explain your feelings that you're not going to feel them. So I feel like it's so important that we talk about these feelings and we get that out there. And I'm so glad that all three of y'all have been here. And my biggest mission in this, and I'm so glad that I could bring moral injury to the table, whereas many people don't know about it, but I agree with everything y'all are saying. The biggest point that I want to get across to especially these veterans is if you're feeling this way, you are not alone. Everybody that is there's so many people that are going through this that you just don't even understand. And because of that guilt and shame, we don't want to talk about it, but it's there. And we have to talk about it because that's the only way we're really going to feel understanding. And if you can talk about that situation, you can lift that weight just a little bit, you know.
Thank you, Sam. Super grateful. Um, I'm glad I met you, and I hate that I met you the way we met, but it was through that very powerful post on TikTok that it stopped me dead in my tracks and hit every emotion, and it stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, who is she? And I said this to you during our interview. That was the quietest TikTok video I've ever seen and the most impactful. It spoke volumes. And very happy that you're here. You're here, like they said, we're paving the way for so many who haven't had an outlet. And I do believe this. And I believe that maybe it was happening before TikTok. I don't think so. I think everyone was just living their lives to the best of their abilities with absolutely no outlets. Some, yes, seek therapy. Some may have really great friends, but many are carrying this many levels of pain and trauma and have no one to talk to. And one of the things that I have seen since I've been on TikTok, and it doesn't come overnight and it doesn't happen instantaneous where, oh, great, I have a veterans live and all of a sudden they're just going to start talking to each other. That doesn't happen either. Everything takes time. But what I can say is through these relationships, bonds are being formed. So they have each other. And going back to what Samantha was saying, yes, they need each other and they need to be able to talk about these things or find a safe space in their brothers or their sisters. Which is why I also feel our meetups, uniting veterans across the nation, is so important because then I'm taking them from the platform and they're meeting in person, which is so important. These gentlemen have all met, they've met each other. So it's a beautiful thing, and we're looking forward to our third meetup. So I want to say thank you to all of you for being here today. Truly do appreciate you. Have love in my heart for all of you. I can't do this alone, but we are stronger together, always will be. Samantha, I think that's us.
It's okay. I can't do this right.
All right. Me neither, girl. There we go.
Which part is my
We're
turn? Hey, we got it.
Hey, we got it. It's always going to be strength in numbers, no matter what it is we do. And the awareness is definitely getting out there. Look at us. Here we are on a podcast talking about uncomfortable things, right? And Sam, actually, this is something she touched base on our interview, which is I want you to get uncomfortable talking about the things that are difficult, because the more you talk about it, the easier it becomes to talk about it. And while you're sharing your story, sharing is caring, right? Someone else is hearing it and it's giving them kind of like the green card to say, I can share mine. It's okay. I can share mine. So you guys keep being amazing, keep shining that light. And there are going to be days where you can't see the light, but please lean into someone for support. And that's for any one of us, civilian or veteran. We will have dark days because life is a roller coaster. It's not always easy. It's not intended to be easy. It's intended to shape us. It's intended for us to find our strengths. And yes, sometimes finding them at the bottom of a hole. And our darkest places is where we find out who we are and what we're made of, even if we didn't ask for it. And with that, I say to our viewers today, thank you for joining us. Stay tuned. There will be more episodes. Part of Break Stigmas is talking about the things that are taboo, like N22, alcoholism, right? Bridging the gap. And I will always stand up and say, yes, we can. Many have said we can't. I say, yes, we can. I am a civilian who hosts veterans' lives. I am a civilian who interviews veterans. I am civilian determined to keep reaching veterans one at a time. I need all of your help, and I thank you all for joining us. Please visit www.breakstigmas.com. Get to know us, support the mission because it matters. Samantha, love your face. Thank you for being here today, and adding to the panel and bringing forth this awesome topic, which so needs to be talked about, moral injury alongside PTSD. And gentlemen, keep rocking. You're amazing. Love your faces. Thank you and have a good night. Stay sunny, stay spicy, always make it count, lead in love, lead the way, be the change you want to see in others. Much love.